Good morning. This is Debra V. Wilson. It is Sunday, the 5th of August 2018, and the time is 900 hours and 17 minutes. That's GMT minus 6. Well, it's now 900 hours and 18 minutes, still GMT minus 6. I am taking off next week for travels to the UK. To do a host of things, to see friends, to see London, England, and to do some research around my MA. I have, in my activism and as well as my academically based activism, always sought to, from a diagnostic, analytical perspective, understand what organic immersions of expressions by civil society mean. I have a particular interest in what they mean emerging from civil society that is feminist in basis. That interest came from my years of activism in the UK and the ways in which feminist-based civil society responded to national security modeling in the United Kingdom. And indeed, that's the research I'm working on. My three countries that I'm interested in are the UK, Israel, and Canada. So it'll be a good opportunity to do some face-to-face observation of a quite emotive and electrifying spaces in the UK in terms of expressions of activism. I have to tell you why for me it's so important to focus on organic. Activism can be facilitated by the state, and it can be a civil society organization that has some basis within the state. So that is not necessarily activism that I'm focused on. I look at society as a human body, and I think of one of the immune systems in the human body that is society is organic expressions of activism. That, just as doctors use symptoms to diagnose, I think that gives us a clearer picture of what is how civil society is experiencing, and from my perspective, I'm looking at national security. So what emerges from civil society, civil society organically gives me a clearer picture of how people are experiencing the life, the world, the space in which they live in. Now, I think that the wisest, and again, my scope is national security. I think the wisest intelligence communities, policing communities, are those that are adept at reading the symptoms and what those symptoms mean. Even if those symptoms are highly disruptive and are inherently, quote unquote, not healthy for the body, that society, I still think on some level, policing can be a responsive role, but it's also a role that has an intelligence basis in that it needs to understand what's happening. On the street, I think what we see as civilians is the response, but, and that can also be intelligence communities as well, but the basis for the response has to be an understanding of the symptoms they're seeing. So, just as I believe with prescribed medication, when you're talking about the human body, the best and most effective prescribed medication is one that truly understands the interconnectivity between all parts of the human body and what this foreign substance coming in, the medication or treatment, is doing to those systems. And the best prescribed course of medical treatment is one that works within the constructive normality of what the human body is. And so that's the way I look at activism. I'm very keen to, I do a lot of observation because I don't want to disrupt. The mere fact of coming in and looking and researching is a foreign object coming in, so I tried my best to do a great deal of non-intrusive observation. The other thing I want to do is I hope to do some traveling to Israel. Haifa is a place for me that is my base point in Israel. It's a place I feel very comfortable in. It was a place I could do some preliminary field work, and there's lots more I need to do. I think, and in addition to that, on a personal note, I don't like to use the term loosely, but I have started making friendships and political alliances, some that I've already had with feminist organizations, but to actually be inside those physically in those spaces has been quite productive and solidifying of those relationships. So I'm very excited about that. So now we're going to go back to the UK. And whilst I'm in the UK, I'm very keen, if possible, from a civilian perspective, reach out. I've already started reaching out to making some inquiries of how to reach out to Israel's embassy in the UK and what that might look like. I'm working on what that might look like in terms of my activism. I'm looking at the ways in which that will help me to understand. There's a strong interconnection, not always an easy one, between activism, Israeli activism and UK activism. And that, for me, given that my three countries are Canada, Israel, and the UK, is nothing short of fascinating. So I'm going to need some help with maneuvering those relationships, those government relationships that are Israeli, and what that might look like, but I'm in the early stages of that. I'm also working on a Patreon account because I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling. So that's interesting for me as well, to put, not pen to paper, but thoughts to the World Wide Web about giving voice again to my work, my passion, and my interest, and what that looks like. I'm hoping to do another podcast about Winnipeg before I take off on my travels, and so if I can at least tape them and then publish them later if I don't get a chance. But I'm hoping to do that today or tomorrow. I think that's about it for now. I will continue to keep posting and podcasting what I'm doing. I'm very excited and quite emotional about traveling to the UK. So on that note, because I acknowledge I cry at the drop of a hat, and so on that note, this is Debra V. Wilson in Winnipeg again. See, I'm losing it now. And I will podcast again very soon. Thank you.